Okay. So it's 7:40 over here in Israel, which is when we said that we would start. Some people are still trickling in, and I'll just keep my eye on that and let them in as they come. But thank you so much, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to this talk. Welcome to people from across the world and right here at home, wherever that is, and literally right here at home. You're probably like I am, like we all are sitting at home, but able to connect so far and wide. So welcome to this talk, Surviving and Thriving in an Unpredictable World, Wisdom and Practical Tools for Clear Thinking and High Functioning when it feels like you're losing it. My name is Richard Jenkins, originally from the UK, now living here in Tel Aviv. And in my day job, I run a creative agency. But outside of that, I've been fascinated for many years by personal development and finding ways in which I can lead a more contented, more nourished, less stressful life, probably suffering from many of the things that, or experiencing many of the things that other people in this room are experiencing as well. And in 2015, I had the great pleasure of meeting Dina, Dr. Dina Wyshogrod, who's a great honor to have as my special guest here this evening. And I started learning mindfulness from Dina. And in 2017, I think, I started teacher training with Dina. And that's something that's an ongoing experience for me. But in my spare time, I teach mindfulness and try to bring interesting people together to discuss some of the subjects that we're going to discuss this evening. And in the last few weeks, I've been bringing these conversations online and speaking to people who spend a lot more time than I do, trying to understand, offer wisdom, and a space to learn about how we can experience life perhaps in a slightly different way. And a few weeks ago, and you keep on using these references to time, and I heard this week that there are really two ways in which we have to talk about time. There's Earth time, and then there's Corona time. So when I say weeks, that's Earth time, but in Corona time, that could be, I don't know, could be a minute, it could be a year. But Dina and I had a wonderful conversation, and we thought we'd do it again and open it up to as many people as possible. So Dina, welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here and to see so many people out there from so many parts of my life and my work. It's really a lovely feeling and extremely humbling. I mean, I feel a tremendous sense of responsibility to rise to the occasion. So, but thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, and thank you for making time. And you know, behind the scenes, we've had lots of really wonderful conversations about what we can talk about and how best to address the issues. And thank you to everyone who wrote so openly and honestly and genuinely in the sign-up form. It really gave us an insight into a lot of interesting things and personal experiences. We're going to try to address as many of those as possible, certainly the common themes that we saw. It led us onto some thinking about how, in many ways, this is such a universal experience for really the whole planet, in a way in which I'm not sure if we were ever been able to say that in modern history, that almost every single human being on Earth, certainly in the developed world, is experiencing this. And yet, it's such an individual experience as well. And each of us, in our own way, is experiencing this and grappling and sometimes struggling. And what we want to do is to honor the universal experience, but also speak to the individual experience as well. I'm sure I heard this from you first, Dina, but I was reminded recently that there is an old Chinese curse: may you live in interesting times. And I think certainly an understatement to say that we're living in interesting times. And perhaps that's a good segue for you to talk to us a tiny bit. What's happening in your world right now, and how are you experiencing this?
I think the way I would like to start this, both for my sake and for Hang on, I need to exit this. I need to put you back on speaker. Okay, something shifted in terms of the view. So I'll see if I can figure that out.
You can go back to speaker view, but it might have flipped onto someone else. No worries.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I think what I would like to do for myself, and also as a way of inviting everybody else into this experience, is to start with a stop. Okay, I actually have my beloved trusty bells here with me, and what I would like to do is I'm going to ring them as an invitation to step into this moment, so that if you allow the sound to come to you and you allow yourself to follow it down and see not only how you're experiencing it in your ears, but also see what it's doing in terms of your body, which is what I'm going to also be doing. It will be an entree into this moment in time. It's also a way of calming down the nervous system, which I will be grateful for, I'm assuming, although we'll see what happens when I get to the moment. So we'll be in the moment together. So I'm going to ring these bells 3 times and invite us in to this experience of right here and right now. So the reason I like to start with that technique is because people often think that mindfulness is some kind of out there kind of phenomenon. And what I try to teach and what I try to learn for myself is that it's really an invitation to step into the moment and to be fully present as we possibly can be. And we need reminders to do that. So the bells will serve as a reminder if I use them here. Your phone can serve as a reminder. Post-its on the wall can serve as a reminder. Pretty much anything can serve as a reminder and an invitation to step into the moment and step out of the chatter of the mind, which is where much of our stress, much of our suffering comes from. So when you ask me, like, what's happening for me right now, I'm aware that having done this, there's been a shift in my body from before to after doing these bells. I feel like I'm much more present. And I would really invite everybody to check and see what the impact of this pause was for them. Okay, we're not, in a position right now, unfortunately. If we were meeting live, I would throw the question open to the group. So we're not going to do that tonight. But I'm hoping that each person takes the time, both during the call and then afterwards, to do this for themselves. And, take the time to check in with yourself, step back into the moment over and over and over, come back into the present, into the physical reality of this present moment, and see what impact that has for you in your life. Hang on a second. I can't hear you at the moment, even though I'm not on mute.
There we go. Could be that Maya was on mute.
Okay.
So,
great.
One of the fascinating things for anyone that has experienced or learned about mindfulness is that the way in which you learn about it is often by doing it. So it's a wonderful starting point for us to jump in with a real practice. And you mentioned this tool of the stop. I think that the stop itself, perhaps you could explain to us a bit about what that is and what it comes down to. But I wanted to let everyone know that roughly this evening we want to cover 3 particular points. One is to introduce and connect to some of the fundamentals such as what is mindfulness, the role of thought, how our body comes into the experience, and other subjects such as gratitude and love, but really connecting to certain fundamentals, understanding stress and understanding anxiety. Secondly, to try to offer some practical tips and tools. And then lastly, to talk about the role of meaning within this entire experience that we're having. And that's really connecting to the title of the talk, Surviving and Thriving. This doesn't necessarily just need to be about survival, although that might be what's needed right now for you, but that there might be opportunities for thriving, even in and amongst some of this craziness. But Dina, I want to bring it back to you to talk to us about mindfulness. What is it, and what role does it potentially have to play in this crazy old world that we're living in right now?
Okay, mindfulness is an interesting concept. I think it's a little bit deceptive. People sometimes think of it as a sort of a product, in a sense, almost a commodity. And it's really a process. It's really an approach to living. It's an invitation to turn toward our experience and to learn how to be more fully present and aware of what's going on with us with less filters. And what I mean by filters, I mean like the kinds of thinking that we engage in or that we sort of slide into almost automatically in our daily life. And we go into autopilot very quickly. Some of that autopilot is very effective, and you wouldn't want to have to learn how to retie your shoes every morning, just as one example. But what also happens to us is that we get caught up in emotional reactivity and also the ways of responding to things, ways of reacting to things that are often based on an assessment of the situation as being a life or death situation. If it's really a life or death situation, your body knows what to do. Okay, but the thing is that most people are not facing a life and death situation in the moment. Okay, it sometimes seems like that to us. So we have to learn ways to be aware of what we're doing and how we're reacting to events, and to find ways to switch out of it. Okay, I'm getting a message. I'm seeing that my sound seems to be going up and down. I'm not doing anything any different.
Maybe are you plugged in at the moment with your earphones?
I have my earphone on.
So maybe unplug it. It could be that there's an issue with the microphone. Could be
that way. Let me know if this is better. All right, and we'll try it this way. Okay, I'll try to move a little closer to the mic. Tell me if this is any better. Okay, give me some. But in the meantime, as the sound goes up and down, you have a really interesting opportunity to be mindful of your reactions right here and right now. Okay, so if I'm going to use the stop as an exercise in how to do that, the stop is an acronym for stop and step out of autopilot. The autopilot will be whatever your reaction is to this experience. The T stands for take a breath. So I'm going to invite you to take a breath. In and out. Okay, don't forget the out breath. All right. The exhale is incredibly important. And then observe. That's the O. Then the observation is notice what your thoughts are all about, what's going on in the mind, what's happening to you emotionally, your feelings, and what happens to you in terms of your sensation. So as things on this call don't go exactly the way you want them to, right? See what that's doing to you. See how you're reacting to it. I'm going to give us a tiny bit of space here for you to check in and see, okay, this isn't exactly what I wanted. This sounds a little funny. Notice what that's doing to you. Notice how you're reacting to that. That's what gives us a choice point. That assessment allows us to figure out, what do I want to do with the situation now? Now you're already, at this point, you're already stepped into being mindful. Okay, mindful doesn't mean being calm. Mindful means being mindful. Mindful means being aware. So if you're aware that you're annoyed, you're mindful of annoyance. If you're aware that you couldn't care less, then you're mindful of I don't care one way or the other. whatever you're experiencing at this moment in time is an experience of mindfulness. And that's a very different experience than just being on autopilot or let's say getting, pissed because it's not going the way you want. Now, you can be mindful of being pissed. That's fine too. I mean, whatever your experience is, we're going to validate it. We're going to notice it. And then we get to decide how we want to work with it. And that's what mindfulness is all about, giving us this choice. Right? There's a quote that I like and I use all the time from Viktor Frankl, who said that there's a space between a stimulus and a response. And in that space, he says, that's where our freedom lies. So our mission always reminds me of Mission Impossible. Our mission, Jim, if we choose to accept it, is to see if we can create that space between the stimulus and the response. Because that's where our freedom is. That's where our potential liberation lies at that moment. And then we can decide on the basis of the assessment that we just conducted in the observation, what do we want to do next about this information?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to first check and see if that's clear on the receiving end.
I want to ask an important question in a moment. I just want to double check because the sound is still, I don't know what the word is, undulating a bit. Did you unplug your earphones?
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
Okay. I'm not sure why. It's just that's the nature of these things sometimes.
I discovered that, Zoom with, bless it, it's amazing. And between the internet connections and whatever, it isn't going to go the way we want, but that's what we're here to discuss tonight.
That's true. I think that's a really important learning point.
This is life.
This is life. Right. It's a prime example for us to grapple with.
This is what it is.
And I think that it really does lead us into something that you just said, which is very powerful. But I think often people come to mindfulness or similar disciplines with the aim of achieving calm, which is really understandable. And it's certainly not a bad thing to want. We all want it. But one of the fundamentals that we learn is that before we can achieve one particular feeling or experience, first we have to become aware of everything that's happening underneath it. One of the first things that we have to do is to engage in that process of just, without judgment, seeing what's happening. Mm-hmm. Just experiencing what is in the moment, which is not always pleasant. Sometimes it can be very challenging. And on a personal experience, one of the things that sometimes keeps me from mindfulness practice is the thought, oh gosh, but that means that I'm going to have to now deal with all that stuff that's there. Why don't I go off and do something that will distract me from it? Right. And I think that that's a very important point that you said, that it's not necessarily about running towards calm or trying to achieve that, but rather just dealing with what is, because that allows us to then create that gap that you speak about between that stimulus and the response. Just that first stage of noticing.
Well, the issue is really learning a certain amount of acceptance. Right? And acceptance is a funny word because it seems to imply that we have to like what we're discovering, and we may not. So I like to use the word acceptance along with the word acknowledgement, recognizing that this is the reality right now, whether we like it or not. Now, the sense of calm that can develop as a result of that comes from letting go of some of the fight, some of the struggle in which we engage, because we don't like things the way we are, and we don't want to accept that this is it right now, and we fight it. So obviously, if you are in a position to change something, I mean, if I knew what to do on my computer right now that could guarantee a better sound, I would do it. Okay? I mean, I'm not deliberately trying to make this a difficult experience. But if this is the reality right now, then I have essentially two choices. I can struggle, I can get all, stressed out by it, or I can say to myself, okay, look, this is the learning experience that the universe is handing me, or Zoom or the internet or whatever. What do I do with this now? How can I work with it and be aware of my reactivity to it and then sort of roll with the punches? Somebody put it this way. They said, you can't stop the ocean waves, but you can learn how to surf. So we kind of have to learn how to surf sometimes. We can't change certain things. Now this is not a new idea, okay? I can quote you, I'll have a beautiful quote that I'll give you from Epictetus, who's a Greek Stoic philosopher. So we're going back 2,000 years. And he says, some things are within our control and some things are not. And the happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of that principle. So it's only after you have faced up to this fundamental truth, this fundamental rule, and learn to distinguish between what you can and cannot control, that inner tranquility and outer effectiveness become possible. Right? So, he's saying it beautifully, and this is, as I said, it's not a new idea, but it's something that we have to learn and relearn and relearn over and over and over. Can we develop the ability to tolerate more of these experiences? Can we learn to roll with the punches? Can we learn to surf, essentially? Now that doesn't mean that we sometimes cannot become calm as a result of putting down some of the fighting, so letting go of some of the struggle. We can often become more calm. And when we do something like the breath from a physiological perspective, we are teaching the body to relax itself, so that it is possible to settle down. It is possible to be calmer sometimes. But the real power of mindfulness it's not like going to a spa. Okay. I know a lot of people kind of expect that, and they're sort of disappointed when that doesn't happen automatically. The real power of mindfulness is that it gives us the ability to be a much more discerning observer of our own experience as it arises, precisely because we don't have control. Look at the situation we're in today. We don't have control. We would like to believe that we do, but it's an illusion. So the only thing that we really can control, or control more, let's put it that way, is the way we react to things, the way we respond to things. That's much more under our control than the external world that we're facing. So can we approach that with an attitude of acceptance, of acknowledgement? And can we do that with both a clear-eyed vision and also with an open heart, with a sense of gentleness and kindness towards ourselves for how difficult this can be? It's in some ways his quote sounds like a sort of tough love, but it is a form of love. It's a form of saying, I know how rough this is. I know how difficult this is. This is the way you're invited to actually respond to yourself and say, this is tough. This is really difficult. What I'm going through right now is horrible.
Yeah.
I'm in pain and I am suffering, and I'm also seeing it clearly for what it is. So, and I don't know if you can see my hands here, but they're in this position, okay? Because my camera has gone all funny, so I'm just kind of flying blind here. But it's an open-handed, open-hearted acceptance and acknowledgement that this is my reality right now. And now what can I do with this?
Mm-hmm.
So if that makes sense to you.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And when you were quoting the Stoic philosopher, I was reminded of the Serenity Prayer, which is a non-tough love version of the same thing, which says its fundamental premise is there are some things which I can control and some things which I can't, and grant me, do you know the words? I don't remember them, but it's, grant me
not offhand,
but it's essentially, we'll look it up.
God, give me the wisdom, the wisdom to know the difference between what I can control and what I can't control. That's the bottom line.
Right. There are some things in life that we have some degree of control over, and some things that we don't. And I think right now we're very much experiencing that in a very pure form, and in and amongst it, in the situation that we're in, it's clear that we're experiencing all kind. That there's the thing, COVID, and all its various different manifestations, and then each of us are experiencing that different. Whether that is overthinking, anxiety about the future, feeling overwhelmed, loneliness, and there are a few things, right? There are the physical realities of being stuck at home, all of the go-tos that we usually have, and exercise and going out and socializing. We've got the physical reality, but then there's the emotional reality as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's, if we don't have those options, where do we have some amount of control? And that's where we have to go inside ourselves and figure out what our resources are. And I'm pretty sure that if you think about your average day, you'll see that it very much depends on your mood. It very much depends on your state of mind, the kind of thinking that you engage in. Because the same thing can one day be, make you ballistic, and the next day, not be a big deal, and the third day just make you laugh. So it's not really the things themselves that make us do what we do or feel what we feel. It's a combination of them as a stimulus and then us in response to that stimulus. And so when we practice these things, we're invited over and over and over to be very, very mindful. I'm going to use that word again, to be very clear-eyed and very focused on what's going on with us.
Mm-hmm.
And then make the conscious decision about how we're going to work with it. Now, since what often happens to us is that there's either an intrusion from the past into the present, like we're haunted by things that happened, so that often kicks in a whole spate of feelings like remorse and regret and sadness and depression. So that's when the past kind of intrudes into the present. Or when we catapult into the future, we get hijacked mostly by our thinking into all the what ifs, what if this, what if that, and we spiral very, very quickly. I mean, I'm sure it doesn't take anyone here more than a split second to suddenly imagine the worst case scenario. So in between these two poles, where is it the safest place to be? Right here in the present, in this moment. And that's not just an abstract concept. That means really, right now, physically, in this moment, can I be fully present? So the practices that we engage in, like feeling the breath, like feeling your feet on the floor. In fact, I'm going to ask you to feel your feet on the floor. Take a split second here, or more than a split second, and I'm wiggling my chair around here so I can get my feet firmly on the floor. Take a moment to feel yourself grounding in the present moment. Can you feel your toes? Can you feel your heel? Can you feel, if you wiggle side to side, can you feel the sides of your feet? And if you can't, maybe you need to pick your feet up. I'm going like this with my feet. Pick your feet up a little bit, bounce them around so you can really feel that contact point. And if I asked you to take a really close look in there, like take your mind and bring it down there, do all the toes have the same level of contact with the floor? Are some more in contact? Some are less in contact? Do all of them, can you feel them all touching each other side to side? Now, the more you engage in this investigation, the less room there's going to be for your mind to do its usual stuff. You're going to be more fully in the present and less in the past and less in the future. And if you do that, then chances are, and I invite you to check it out, don't believe it just because I'm saying it, that would be ridiculous. Take this experience, experiment with it, and see, okay, as I engage in this present moment experience, this physical reality, what's happening to me emotionally? What's happening to my mind? What's happening to my body? Remember, that's the three elements of the O in the stop. Observing your cognitive stuff, your emotional stuff, and your physiological stuff. And do you feel a shift? The same way that we did with taking that breath in the beginning when I rang the bells. So when you're literally stepping back into the present, feeling your feet on the floor, how does that affect your whole being? And that's something that we can do over and over and over. You can feel your feet on the floor. You can take a deep breath and really feel it, really know that you're breathing. When you breathe in, know that you're breathing in. When you breathe out, know that you're breathing out. No, nothing abstract about this. It's very concrete, very real, and very oriented to being fully present right now.
Dina, can you talk a bit more about what's happening when we do that? What is the process underlying this tool that you're offering people here? So they might be experiencing any number of feelings in any given moment or experiences. And we're saying to them, put your attention in your feet. Why? Why is that important? What's that doing? What's the process behind it?
Well, the way we are constructed, the way our brains are constructed, the mind is always scanning for danger, right? And it's a wonderful thing. I mean, our minds are amazing, okay? So don't get me wrong. The mind is amazing. It's responsible for all the incredible creations that we can, we as humans take credit for. But unfortunately, the mind also can catapult us into all kinds of scary scenarios. So the mind, as I said, is always doing this scanning routine, and the particular piece of the mind I'm talking about is the amygdala, which is always checking. It's in the middle of the brain. It's the emotional limbic brain that gets activated whenever it perceives that we're under threat. Now, if it's a real threat, you're probably going to react faster than you can actually be conscious, which is a good thing, because if we stopped and took the time to think about things, we probably would be dead. Right? The mind is we're just built to react very, very quickly. But if the threat is not a real threat, it's more of an emotional threat, it's more of a psychological threat, then we're activating ourselves for no particularly good reason. At least, I mean, if we're thinking about it more logically, we'll say, oh, come on, that's, it's not a life or death situation. But the fact is that somehow, for some reason, and often this is related to our histories, right, we are responding to it as if it is a life or death situation. So the whole body goes into a fight or flight reaction. And it's important for us to begin to notice that, because when we go into that fight or flight reaction, we can't think. We can't think well. Anyway, all of our mind is geared towards survival, which, as I said, is great if you're really facing a life or death situation, but not so great if you need to think your way out of a situation or be more creative, right? That is not the best way of thinking, okay? So anything that we can do to calm ourselves down physiologically and to have us reconnect with the reality of this moment, as opposed to all the scary scenarios that the mind is dishing out, will enable us to function better. It's the exact reason why the U.S. Navy SEALs, why the Marines are teaching their elite units to do this kind of practice, to stop and breathe. And interestingly, talk about life or death situations, they teach their guys to do this when they are in the battlefield, when they're literally facing life or death situations, because that's when you really need to be thinking clearly. That's when you really need to be making very wise decisions. So the same applies to us in our daily life. Every time you start to feel yourself ratcheting up in some way, you can catch yourself. That's what being mindful is all about. Can I be mindful of the fact that I'm getting worked up? Can I bring myself back into the present moment, like I just did, either by feeling your feet on the floor or taking a nice deep breath and checking in and going, okay, whoa, wait a minute. What is happening to me right now? That's creating that space that I was talking about before, between the stimulus and the response. And then when you have that bit of space, when you say, okay, wait a minute, what's going on in my head? What's going on in my body? What am I feeling emotionally? You're already in a completely different place. It doesn't take more than a breath or so to do it. I mean, we talk our way through it, so it seems like a long thing, but when you actually get used to doing it, and you do have to practice this, it just takes a split second to go, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, hey, let's push reset. Let's, recalibrate. Let's check out the system. Let's cool our jets here. Let's cool the mind down a little bit. And then when you get to the last letter of stop, which is proceed, you can proceed from a place of greater wisdom, greater choice. And that's how the physiology works together with the psychology of it. So tell me if that's clear enough, or you need me to tweak it in any way.
I think it's clear, and I think it's something that in many ways has has to be lived to really experience it, because there is a certain it's a very experiential form of learning, getting to know our mind. But the first stage, which is something which really sticks out to me, is knowing that our mind is knowable,
Right.
that it doesn't have to be something that we are imprisoned by, that our experience in any given moment doesn't have to be the only way. And the mechanism of our mind and the interaction between thinking, feeling, and emotions is something that is knowable. This is something that has been thought of and thought about for many thousands of years. And certainly the practice of mindfulness is one stream. It's not a fix all. But I think that for me, knowing that it's knowable is very important.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that we have the ability to choose and to change direction, and that we're not imprisoned in something. And that when we do get imprisoned, when we do get stuck, as we are bound to do, that we can catch it at any moment. And any moment is actually a new moment, that we have another option. We are not trapped forever. So that, we can shift gears, we can switch things around, and we can free ourselves ultimately from the old reactivity.
One of the things that came up in and amongst the answers, and it's something that I on a personal level struggle with, is sleep. And it's a common thing that I know often people will find themselves at 4 a.m. or whatever it is, suddenly thinking about stuff that isn't necessarily helpful in the moment. And in our half asleep state, we can be aware of this, or I'll speak in the first person, I can be aware of this cycle of thinking. And it could be about anything. I mean, it could be as mundane as something I forgot off the shopping list, all the way to genuine, scary financial concerns, or life and death, or health situations. But either way, we're stuck there at 4 p.m. and you can see the mind going in cycles, trying to process things. And of course, anyone who's learned a tiny bit of mindfulness meditation will potentially start trying to concentrate on their breath. And I'll tell you my experience. I'll start breathing, and right, this is great. This is going well. Oof, starting to feel calm. And then that thought will come back again. You left the milk out. Okay, yeah, no problem. Start to breathe again. And I go around and again. And then, 20 minutes later, I'm huffing and puffing, getting angry and even more stressed about the fact that I'm unable to de-stress myself. And it's 4 a.m. And, I'm sure people have that experience. But it's a fascinating experience. I would love to know, is there a different way that I can go about it? Is there a different way that we can approach this? And is there an understanding that we can bring to the experience?
Everything is worse in the middle of the night. So you kind of have to know that going in. All right. There will be a morning. And even if you don't sleep through the night, it's not the end of the world. In fact, I think that attitude about it is one of the most important things that you can say to yourself. Okay, so in the worst case, I didn't get a great night's sleep. I'll do better tomorrow. I'll meditate tomorrow during the day, this is literally what I often say to myself. It's like, okay, what the hell? This night's, a done deal. Tomorrow I will meditate during the day. And we do know, by the way, there is science backing this up, that when you meditate, it's in some cases actually better than a nap. Okay, because it somehow rests the body, it helps the body calm down. And I'm saying that as it may sound paradoxical given what I said before about this not being a calming exercise, but it does seem to have this physiological restful effect on the body. So you can get your rest. You do not have to get into a cycle of worrying about not sleeping. And the particular practice that a lot of people, at least I find very useful for this, is the body scan. in which you systematically work your way through each part of the body. I usually start with the feet and the big toes. And anyone who's taken my courses know we go right down there to the big toe of the left foot usually. And you just ask yourself, okay, what am I sensing in this part of my body right now? And then you go from the toe to the toes and to the sole of the foot and to the top of the foot and to the heel and to the ankle. And you just slowly and systematically move your attention through the body. In my classes, this invariably puts people to sleep, which I don't take personally. It's just what happens. So it actually works for a lot of people. And we can see if we can actually put a link up. You'll have to help me with that, with the technical stuff, but we can see if we can put a link up to the body scan. But anyone who's taken the course is familiar with it. And it is a way of really focusing your mind on something very specific. It's like, it's like when you have a little baby and it's kind of futzing around and doing all kinds of things. You finally give it something to play with. It's like, here, play with this and stay put. So the mind is very much like that. The mind is kind of like this little agitated little baby sometimes, and it's flitting around from thing to thing. And you say, all right, let's just focus on this right now. Let's see if you can just notice what's going on in the foot. Where's the contact between the foot and am I feeling the blanket? Am I feeling the sheet? Am I feeling the mattress? What's happening here? What's happening there? And that gives the mind something to focus on. And it's definitely worth trying at the very least. And as I said, the other thing that's really important is not getting into catastrophic kinds of thinking, like, oh my God, I'm not sleeping, I won't be able to function tomorrow. That often will get you into a cycle. So you just like, okay, whatever. If I don't sleep tonight, I'll make it up tomorrow, and that's it. Don't make a problem out of it, because there's really no reason to. So that's what I do when I deal with sleep, and that's what I recommend to people. There are other tips about sleep we can make. I have a whole list of sleep ecology suggestions. We can make that available to you too. But this is some of the stuff that I do in the middle of the night.
Mm. I usually end up saying to myself, okay, that's quite enough, in a gentle way, but this is enough now. It's 4:30 a.m. and this is not that we've thought about it 16 times now, and this is not the time to solve it. Let's approach this in the morning.
Well, you know what? Let me jump on that comment also. I think it's also very important for us to learn how to treat ourselves with kindness. Right? There is a formal loving kindness practice, and if we have time, we can probably do some of that. But we're trying to learn a different way of relating to ourselves in these difficult times. And one of the things that we're not so great at doing for ourselves on a regular basis is to treat ourselves with kindness and compassion. I think many of us grew up, somehow getting from our society that it's better to, spoil the rod and, spare the rod and spoil the child, tough love types of things. The research is interesting on that. If you are more compassionate to yourself, to how you're feeling, you generally are more able to stick to your plans of, let's say, staying on a diet or doing exercise or things like that. If you start beating yourself up, you're much more likely, if you fall off the wagon, not to get back on for a much longer period of time. So if you're having a rough time, one of the things you can pay attention to, one of the things you can be mindful of, is the tone with which you talk to yourself, the way that you treat yourself. Do you give yourself like a club upside the head and go, you're such a jerk, I can't believe you're doing this again? Or can you say to yourself a kind of soothing, hug kind of thing, and say, it's rough, this is tough, I'm sorry you're having such a rough time right now, I get it, this is difficult. Okay, I'm here with you. This is like you talking to you now. I'm here, we're in this together, I'm not leaving you. And it's hard. It's really hard. So, we'll get through it. It'll be okay. And that's also incredibly important in terms of mindfulness. Mindfulness is not just an awareness thing, because you could be aware and very nasty to yourself. It's an awareness coupled with love and compassion. Now, this is not the same as self-indulgence. I think that's really important to differentiate between the two. I'm not saying that it's a wonderful thing, go eat all the junk food you want just because you're being self-compassionate. No, that's not self-compassion. Sometimes it's okay, and I'm not coming down on that either. But I'm saying let's not mush the terms together, right? Self-compassion and loving kindness have to do with the way in which we treat our inner experience, our feelings. And then it's much more likely that the behaviors that we engage in will possibly be more in the direction that we would like them to be.
Mhm. You mentioned the loving kindness meditation as a formal practice, and I think that we'll perhaps try and end this evening's call with that practice. But one of the things we discussed is that maybe you would lead us through a breathing meditation. I'm wondering if we can experience that together here and see, how that takes shape across the airwaves.
Okay, how much time do you want me to?
That's 5 minutes, something like that.
Okay. All right. All right. So I'm going to invite you all to find a comfortable way to be. Right. The position you choose is up to you. And some people are going to be sitting, but some of you may prefer to do this lying down. So take a moment to settle into a comfortable position. Decide if you'd like your eyes to be open or shut. If you want to leave them open, you can just see if you can lower your gaze a little bit so that there isn't as much distraction coming in from the world around you. And also notice how you'd like your hands to be placed. And these things that I'm mentioning now are not just casual comments. Each one of these things is a way of being physically attuned to yourself and what you need right now. So consider it both a way of being mindful of your body's needs and a way of being compassionate toward your body's needs. So we're including all of it together. And by way of focusing our attention, in light of what I said before about the mind needing something to focus on, we're going to invite ourselves, at least for this practice, to use the experience of the breath. And what strikes me right now is that this whole COVID thing is a disease of breathing. It impacts the lungs. So when we become aware of the breath, when we become aware of this physical action of breathing, we are really connecting with life itself. And we're connecting with the miracle of being alive, of being able to breathe in, being able to breathe out. Because one of the other antidotes to fear is gratitude. So if we can really connect with this experience of breathing, we're connecting with that sense of the miraculous and the great and the gratitude that we can experience. Like, wow, I can really feel myself breathing in right now. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. I can feel it in my body. As where you feel it in your body will depend on you. Some people feel it better at the nostrils. Some people feel it more clearly at the chest. Some people feel it more clearly at the belly and other places. So wherever you feel it is fine. And you don't need to change the way you're breathing. So let yourself breathe the way you're breathing. So whatever pace it's at, slow, fast, deep, shallow, does not matter. Just what matters is that, as you breathe in, you can even say this to yourself, breathing in, I am aware of breathing in. And breathing out, I am aware of breathing out. And really see if you can focus your attention on that experience, on the physical reality of the breath. This is anchoring us in the present moment and connecting us with the experience of life. And whenever your mind wanders, because the mind is going to wander, you probably already even noticed that before I said anything, that's part of this practice too. So you don't have to come down on yourself at all. In fact, you can congratulate yourself for being mindful of the wandering mind. And then you just gently and firmly bring your attention back to the breath. And because, in the interests of time, we're going to keep this practice short, just before we bring it to a close, taking a moment to really appreciate what you've just done for yourself. Because even in these few moments, you've given your body, you've given your mind a gift. You've increased your physiological and emotional resilience. You've reconnected and reconnected over and over with the present moment. So something to really be appreciative of, grateful for. So that's really important, to take the time to notice that, to really register that. And then when you're ready, allowing your eyes, if they've been closed, to open gently. If you've had them slightly open, then again, making a gentle transition out.
Thanks for that, Dina. And if anyone still has their eyes closed, then they're welcome to keep them closed.
You can keep them closed.
There are so many topics that we could cover, and so many questions to ask, and I'm conscious that we have a limited time together. I think that we've covered a few different practices here. When it comes to sitting down to meditate, one of the common things that we'll both be aware of, and anyone that's tried to do it will know themselves as well, is that, and I alluded to it before, is that sometimes when we sit down to breathe, that's when all the stuff comes. And for many people, and I know many of the people that are with us today who shared with us in the sign-up form, are experiencing some really strong emotions.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do in those situations when we sit down at the cushion or the seat, whatever it is, and that's the time when it's as if the floodgates have opened? What can we share with people in this particularly challenging time?
There are a few different things I'd like to say. With time, you can learn how to work with all those things. Okay, but what I would like to say, because as a sort of starting practice, I want to emphasize that mindfulness is not something that depends on sitting down on that cushion. That's a way of sort of setting up a kind of artificial laboratory to practice being mindful. But mindfulness has nothing to do with that, okay? Or at least not only to do with that. What I would encourage people to do is to integrate this much more seamlessly into their daily lives. So that, I mentioned before, feeling your feet on the floor. That will help you ground yourself and stay present so that you're not as bowled over by the stuff that comes up from inside, the feelings. When you're washing your hands, which you may find yourself doing once or twice or 100 times during the course of the day, can you be fully present to that experience? Can you be mindful of your, hands making contact with the water, with the soap? Can you feel the contact between your fingers? Can you be fully present in that moment? That's an experience of mindfulness. It doesn't require sitting on a cushion. When you're playing with your kids, or when you are on the phone with somebody, can you be fully present? That's what this is really all about. Mindfulness is not a matter of just doing an exercise for 10 or 15 minutes and say, okay, check, I did that, I'm done. Mindfulness is really an invitation to how we live our lives in a way that's more present if we choose it. And that includes the possibility that we may say to ourselves, I can't, this is too much for me. I need something, I need to distract myself right now, whatever that may be. So that option exists too. It's just better if we make that, if we take that option as a result of a choice, as opposed to like suddenly standing in front of a cake plate and the cake was just there 20 minutes ago and now it's all gone. So if we do things with that awareness, we have more choice points. We can find better ways to take care of ourselves than being overwhelmed by those feelings. So if you do find yourself sitting down and feeling overwhelmed by stuff, then maybe that's not the best practice for you at any given moment. But inviting yourself back into the present, into a real physical connection with the present, whether it's I can feel this breath going in and out, I can feel my feet on the floor, I feel the dishes in my hand as I wash them. I'm really paying attention to you when you talk to me. So that, first of all, will help screen out a lot of that other noise that's coming in from the past and from jumping into the present. It also helps us be more fully present, which makes us more alive and may also connect us with gratitude, because we get very sucked into very quickly all the thoughts about what we don't have. Well, we can't go out and we can't hug our kids and we can't be this and we can't be that. Well, yeah, that's all true, but look at what we can do. The fact that all of us can be on a call like this and connect with each other. Yeah, I know it's not the best way to connect. And if we were doing this live, I could be giving all these people hugs and it would be so cool. But we can connect. We can be in touch with one another in a way that, not so many years ago, this would have been unthinkable. And if we really were alone, we would have really been alone. So it's so important for us to get off the autopilot and come back into the moment and then have more choices and more possibilities. And that's incredibly important. In addition, I want to just bring in the other aspect, which is the loving kindness. Yes, it is hard because we do have histories and we do have lives and we do have, who God knows, even if it may go back to previous generations. So that sense of loving kindness is incredibly important too. You're having a really rough time. This is really hard for you. You know what? Maybe this isn't the best practice right now. Maybe you should just focus on, giving your kid a hug or calling a friend or, feeling your feet on the floor or having a schnapps or a bite of chocolate cake, and really be there for it. Really feel it. As long as you're going to eat it or drink it, be there for it. Don't just go on autopilot. This is the famous expression, be here now, and then see what you learn from that.
Yeah. I think that the line switching from autopilot into whatever the opposite is, conscious, active, is
presence
is so crucial in and amongst all of this. And if I were to want to write one thing as a takeaway, that life doesn't have to be led on autopilot. In fact, life shouldn't be led on autopilot. We tend to miss a lot of the good stuff when we're on autopilot. But also a lot of the things that we're experiencing in terms of thinking can be happening in the background. And we can sometimes feel as if we have no choice in the situation. And what my experience of mindfulness has offered me is that actually it can put me in the driving seat. Not always, but every so often I can switch into the driving seat and I can experience not only a respite from some of that constant thinking that's going on, but also I can experience life in a slightly deeper way. That there is a difference between drinking a cup of tea whilst talking to 10 people on WhatsApp, and there's a difference between drinking that cup of tea by myself, savoring each sip, or chocolate cake, or ice cream, or schnapps, or G&T, whatever your go-to is. But there's a real difference between those two things.
Yes.
There's a difference between sat there stewing in my thinking, whether it's at 4 a.m, or on my sofa, or driving, those are the days, or sitting wherever I am, or saying, hey, I don't want to be stuck in this loop. I'm going to concentrate on my breath, or feel my big toe, or whatever it is, just for those moments. It's an act of empowerment.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that leads us quite nicely into the second part of the title, which is not just about surviving, but thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Because mindfulness isn't just about the absence of fear, but offers us a route to resilience and vitality and living more fully and joy.
Yeah.
And we are in a very, very challenging time, but I'll hand over to you in a moment, because in one of our chats, we spoke about the opportunity provided by meaning in and amongst this situation. Yeah. And I think that would be a nice thing for us to talk about.
Yeah. So there's a lot that I could say about this, but I was thinking about this a lot during these weeks. For me, this crisis has really raised the question about, okay, I've been given this growth opportunity, shall we say. I don't always receive it with graciousness. I have a few adjectives I could add before that, but this is the reality. So here's this experience that is happening, and I can't really control it out there, but the question I can ask myself is, all right, so how do I want to be during this crisis? Who do I want to be during this crisis? And when we get to the end of this crisis, because we will get to the end of this crisis, and we look back at this period of time, what will I want to have accomplished? And that may be actual physical activities. I mean, I know friends who are decluttering their closets and fixing their shelves and stuff like that. So do I want to have done those kinds of activities? Do I want to be a certain way as a person within myself? Are there qualities that I would like to strengthen? Are there ways of being that are important to me? I don't want to waste this time. Rahm Emanuel, who was the former mayor of Chicago and at one point White House chief of staff, says, you never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And this is what I mean by that is it's an opportunity to do things you think you couldn't do before. So we have this unbelievable crisis. We're living through history. Someday our kids, our grandchildren will look at this in the textbooks and they'll study it. It'll be in the history books, and it'll be in the economics books, and it'll be in the psychology books. And they'll come to us and they'll say, what did you do during that period of time? How did you get through it? How did you handle it? What do you do? So a question that I think is really important for me, so I'm sharing it with you, is what does this experience mean to you? And if we're writing history, okay, I'm going to take the word history and say it's his story, it's her story, it's your story, it's my story. How do we want to write that story? And that's a challenge for me, and I'm throwing it out there for each and every one of you. How do you want to write your story in this period of time? That's my current challenge.
Thank you so much for that, Dina. I think Just on a note of the sound, I don't know if I noticed a difference when you had your notebook there. I'm not sure if that was what was making a shift in the sound, but it's been pretty good for the last few minutes. But
good. Okay.
Thank you for that. And I think that offers us an opportunity to look at this differently, to ask an important question throughout it, and to bring some meaning into it. I'm looking at the time. We're just over an hour, and we did say to people that we'll try to keep it to an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. So I do want to see if anyone has a question that they wanted to ask. If you do have a question and you would like to ask it, then please, there are a few ways in which you can do it. You can write into the group chat. You could start typing something now, and I'll be able to see it. I think that there is a raise hand tool somewhere. Not that one. That's new for me. I'm not even sure about that one. Zoom keeps on changing on a daily basis. But if you would like to ask a question, please feel free to write down in the box below. But
and I also want to do for a brief loving kindness practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll end with a loving kindness practice, and maybe what we'll do is we'll end with that practice and then allow people to sign off in their own time. So a few housekeeping bits, and then some thank yous. So this whole talk has been recorded. What I will do is I'll upload it to a YouTube link so that people can see what we've seen today, and I'll also separate out the audio so that can be shared as well. I need to think of a way to do that. But if you signed up via the form, then we'll send this out to you. And Dina, I think you'll also send it potentially to your database. In addition, we're going to try and put together some resources based on some of the things that we've mentioned here, whether that's the stop technique, the body scan, and perhaps some other things. And then lastly, someone has very kindly shared the serenity prayer with us. Great timing. I'll come to that in just a second. Thank you so much, Lena. Just another thing, that we're conscious that some of the topics that we've spoken today might be familiar to you. Some of them might be totally alien. And some of them might fall into a category of, not sure, want to know more. And if it's want to know more, then we're going to think of a way in which we can offer more, whether that's more sessions like this, whether it's shorter form, whether it's smaller groups, ways of learning this. This is learnable. That's the great thing about it. We're going to have a think about that. If you do want to know more, or you want to learn more, please feel free to reach out so that we can give you that more. So that's that. I'll share the serenity prayer, then some thank yous, and then we'll go to loving kindness. Serenity prayer, which is what we spoke about before, which is about this control or not control, goes like this. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, one moment at a time. And now some thank yous. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today.
Yes, absolutely.
From whether you're in Atlanta, Georgia, London, England, Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, in no particular order. Thank you for joining us today. Switzerland as well, of course. And thank you as well for putting up with some of the technical issues. Had lots of messages privately and publicly. You know, technology has a life of its own. And I am grateful for the learning opportunity it presented us in this moment to just deal with what is, not just to make the best of it, but to thrive through it as well. But I'm particularly grateful to Dina Wyshogrod, our wonderful speaker and my friend and colleague. I am so grateful that I get to call you my teacher and friend and colleague. That's a wonderful opportunity.
I'm very grateful to you for this. So thank you. And to everybody out there. So.
We'll wrap it up with a loving kindness meditation, and I'll hand it over to you, Dina. And then when we're done, I'll allow everyone sign off at your own leisure. as and when, and we'll be in touch as a follow-up.
Okay. Okay, so once again, see if you can make yourselves comfortable. The loving kindness practice, just as an important note, is something that you can do on a formal basis. Like you can set aside time to deliberately do this, or you can just make it part of your life. The practice itself consists of sending out into the world intentions of well-being, of health and happiness, of resilience, to beloved folks in your life, to people whom you don't even know, but you know are out there. You can sometimes extend it to people who cause you some difficulty in your life. That can be a little challenging sometimes. And then you can take it out to what we call all sentient beings. The way I often integrate it on a just routine basis as I go through my day is if I, for example, hear an ambulance going past on the road, and I will just say the kind of expressions we're going to use in the practice. I'll just say, may you be healthy, may you be safe, may you be protected. When I'm getting ready to see clients, I will often stop and wish myself well in receiving them and send the same wishes out to them before I even open the door. So this is something that you can really merge into your life on a, seamless kind of a way, which is what I'm trying to convey is how I think mindfulness ultimately should function. Not something that you do like only at 8:00 in the morning or whatever, but something that just permeates your experience. So right now for this more formal practice, making yourselves comfortable once again, deciding if you'd like your eyes to be open or shut, finding a comfortable way to place your hands, because loving kindness starts with us. Okay, so making sure that you're taking care of your own physical and emotional safety and comfort. And then we'll start with us here, all of us who've formed this very precious circle together from all over the place. May each of us and all of us together be safe and protected. And you can repeat the phrases in your own mind. You can, just let them sort of roll over you. I could have said, I didn't want to add too many things, but I'm feeling like I need to. I like to place my hand or both hands on my heart for this practice. But again, it's really a matter of your personal choice. It just helps me feel comfort and helps me center my attention on the fact that this is a heart-centered practice. So may we all be safe and protected. May each of us, may all of us be healthy and happy. May each of us and may all of us be strong and resilient. May each of us and may all of us be free from suffering. And may each of us and may all of us find our way to inner peace. And then extending this outward so we can include all of those on the health front lines, all of the doctors and all the nurses and all the workers and all the support people and the people bringing in supplies and all these ever widening circles. And of course, the patients themselves and their families. And extending it outward as far and wide as you want to take it. The traditional phrases have to do with all sentient beings. So I'm going to include all beings, including animal, mineral, and vegetable. May all beings be safe and protected. May all beings be healthy and happy. May all beings be strong and resilient. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings experience peace. And may the whole world be blessed with peace. So thanking you all again for being part of this, for being part of this journey and part of this amazing world of ours. All of us are in this together, supporting one another. So I'm going to sign us off with 3 sounds of the bell. Wishing you all the best. Bye.